Hey Discovery, so glad to have you with us this weekend, whether you are in the East Auditorium or the West Auditorium, and so glad that we are doing this series together, Justice, Mercy, and Humility. And all of this is leading us up to a great opportunity for all of us to serve together at both of our church locations, both in Simi Valley and in Valencia, on May the 18th for Serve the City. And I'm going to tell you more about that later, but make sure that you download your Discovery Church app and you sign up for that right there, or you can do that online as well. Hey, this series has been designed around this idea that a lot of us wrestle with, because I know there's some of us right now that are watching and you're thinking, this whole thing of following Jesus, you know what, my wife's into that, I'm not. Or my kids are into that, I'm not. I started too late in the game, I can't figure that out, but that's what this series is about. For some of you, you think, I've been following Jesus a long time and I think I've got it all figured out and I'm kind of in a rut and you just wonder what's next. This series is for you. For some of you, you might be thinking, you know what, the whole thing seems exhausting, or it is exhausting. I don't want to be a church person. This series is for you. Because this whole idea of following Jesus is it's not always easy, but it is not complicated. In fact, about 400 years before Jesus, a prophet by the name of Micah really summed up what it means to follow Jesus. Take a look at what he wrote even before Jesus was here. He says, I want you just to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And through this series, we're diving into each of these words. What does it mean to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly? And so last weekend, you got a chance to hear from the unforgettable Bob Goff. And as we all know, he has lived a life that is one filled with justice. And unfortunately, we're not able to post that video on our websites because Bob mentioned different places where he's doing justice work around the world, and those places may not be safe as a result of it, and so we're not able to show that. But we are able to let you listen into a conversation that I had with Bob right before he came out to speak last weekend. And I got to sit down with him and listen to him and just have him tell stories about justice. And on this podcast that I do, you can subscribe for that and just get all that content, or you can just go to my website, PastorRustyGeorge.com, and you can follow along with that particular conversation. It was phenomenal hearing from Bob. But then next week, we're going to talk about this idea of humility, and we're going to get to hear from a woman who's doing incredible things in the world on behalf of not just women, but people that are involved in human trafficking and rescuing those people and bringing peace to so many other people. Her name is Christine Caine. She's an incredible author and speaker, and you're not going to want to miss my interview with her next weekend as we talk about humility. And then we're going to wrap it all up on May the 18th as those at Discovery in Simi Valley and those at Real Life in Valencia and Canyon Country, we are all going to be serving our communities together May the 18th starting at 9 a.m. I don't want you to miss it. So make sure you sign up via the app or the website so you can be ready to roll with that. Sign your whole family up. It's going to be a lot of fun. But today we're talking about this idea of mercy. What does it mean to love mercy? Now, I think most of us kind of have an idea of what mercy is. You know, you might think about it when you were a kid and you would wrestle with your older brother and he'd get you pinned down, so you'd say, mercy, and he'd let you go. But now you might think about it in other terms. Maybe you remember back in high school or even in college where you completely bombed a test. And you went into your teacher and you said, listen, I need a lot of help. But she lets you know that even if she rounded up, even if she graded on the curve, you're looking at like an F+ at best. And so finally you say, can you please show me mercy? Mercy is not getting what you deserve. Justice is giving people what they deserve. Mercy is not getting what you deserve, because what you deserve is to fail. But you ask her for mercy. Maybe for you it looks more like this. You've had those moments where the ends don't meet and you can't figure out how to pay both the apartment lease and also your car payment. So you're thinking, well, what am I going to do? I guess I should just pay the car because I can live in my car, but I can't drive my apartment. And so you decide, I'm going to go to my superintendent and just say, listen, would you just give me mercy? Would you just push this a few more days? I can pay you, I just need a few more days. What are you asking for? You're asking to push the consequences, to push the eviction, and to say, would you not give me what I deserve? That's mercy. So what does it mean to love mercy? It might look like what you feel when you see somebody forgive somebody else. It might be what you experience when you see your kids get over an argument and forgive one another. It might be what you've seen maybe happen in a particular form of government or with a police officer, where mercy is extended to somebody else. And there's something that happens in you that says, I love that. But this is basically what we're talking about right here, that loving mercy looks like this. It means we not only receive it, but we offer it. And not just to others, but also to ourselves. Well, Brian Welch is a kid that grew up in Bakersfield, and he and some friends put together a band, kind of a new wave of heavy metal back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they just exploded with growth. And at this meteoric rate of becoming rock stars, along with that came all the demons that follow and all the trappings of stardom. And Brian fell hard into that and lost a marriage and fell into a drug addiction. And at the bottom of this pit he was in, he found Christ and found the mercy that came from Jesus. But he did not always find that mercy from other people. And I wanted you to have a chance to hear Brian's story of not only the mercy he received from Jesus, but the mercy that he learned to extend to others, even when they weren't that merciful to him. Take a listen to my interview with Brian Welch. Brian, tell us a little bit about growing up. You grew up in, as you call it, Bakersfield, right?
Baco, yeah, because it's 115 degrees in the summer and we bake in the sun.
The guys in your band, I mean, you've known each other for a while, right? And you formed in high school or right out of high school. How did Korn come together?
I met the singer in elementary school. We weren't friends, but we knew of each other. I met the bass player in junior high, the other guitar player and drummer in just high school. So we would play like little cheesy bands in the 80s, like hair metal or whatever, tight jeans and big hair. So
now hold on one second. You're saying the 80s bands were cheesy bands? Because that's what I grew up with.
You did?
That was solid stuff.
What was your bands that you liked?
Rat.
Yes.
Dokken.
Yep. Those were my two favorite bands right there. You
Seriously?
Just mentioned. Dokken was my favorite.
Rockin' with Dokken.
Yes, Motley Crue too, but I like the others better that you mentioned because they had like musicianship, like good like solos and writing and everything, and the vocals were just on another level. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so grew up with that and then started doing your own thing. And you guys are kind of known for pioneering the new metal wave. What made Korn different than maybe music before Korn?
The music was emotional. Our singer just opened his soul and got emotional and would whether it was anger at something the parents did or something. It was like he was going through therapy on our first couple records and talking about childhood issues with parents and talking about relationships and heartbreak and being lost on drugs or whatever. It was just like a crying out and like, this is what you did to me, and it was real and raw. It's like he opened his soul and said, everybody look, this is what goes on inside of me. So it was really powerful and it really ignited kind of a reaction in the rock world about, where you can go as an artist with your soul and with your intimate emotions and everything.
Right. Okay, so tell us what's going on with you at this point, because I'm sure growing up, being a rock star sounds like the greatest thing ever, and you achieve it. With that comes a lot of fame, money, but temptation as well. Were drugs something, or addiction something that you felt like you'd wrestled with on and off up until that point, or was it all brand new to you at that moment?
I had messed around a little bit, but when I turned 15, it was beer. It was beer. It wasn't hard alcohol because me and my friends, we kind of liked to be in control. We don't want to like throwing up. It just doesn't sound fun,
Usually not.
It was always beer on the weekends.
So you get into the rock star life, and is that when you were introduced to meth? Did that become part of your life at that point? Tell us a little bit about the downward spiral you went on.
I was living in LA and I was going back and forth to Bakersfield. And so one weekend we were in Bakersfield and there's this girl that told a couple friends she was curious about me and everything. I went to hang out with her, and we ended up at this apartment, and somebody just broke out this pink-looking dust, and the girl did it, and everybody started doing it, and I was like, I'll do it, and I snorted it, and it just was like, oh, it burned so bad. And then next thing you know, I was just high as the clouds. I mean, I felt like my heart was pounding, and after the party was over, everybody went home. I went to my parents' house and went to bed, and I rolled around for 7 hours. And I was like, that stuff is the worst stuff I've ever tried. I'm never doing it again. And so once we started the band, we had this tour manager that we found out was a dealer. Just hanging out some nights, going to bars and everything. I remember one night I had to drive somewhere, and I drank too much, and this guy goes, I got something that'll sober you up. And so I was like, all right. Well, I didn't even put it together that it was like the pink stuff, but it was white or whatever. But I tried it, and I was just like, whew. And then I stayed up all night. I remembered, I was like, you can't sleep, so I'm just gonna stay up. That started, it was like, I knew it was bad. I knew it was a dirty drug. I knew it was like, people talked about it in secret. And when I did it, I would stop because I was like, that's bad. That stuff's gnarly, and it's not healthy.
Right.
It's not good for you,
So your life begins to kind of spiral out of control. You're married at this point in the band, and you have a daughter. Tell us a little bit about when you hit rock bottom and your decision, I got to do something about this.
I fell into the main thing with doing the meth too much. I'd try to do it like every once in a while because I started to like it, and then it got more and more, and I got to a point where it was like, I got to quit. This stuff is not okay, and I'm getting addicted. So I quit. I quit for like 2 months, and then I met the mother of my future daughter, you'd say. And so when I met her, she was using. I didn't know at first, but then I found out. And so I told her, look, I'm done with that stuff. And she was going back and forth on it. I broke up with her because of it and everything. And then she finally quit, and we ended up together. But when Korn came and we formed that band, it was all at the same time. And some of the other guys I found out were using it too. And then once we found out each other was using it, we were like, oh, you're doing it too. And then we started doing it together and writing songs and everything. And you think you can write masterpieces like Mozart when you're high. Then you listen to it the next day and you're like, that's the worst song I've ever heard. So it's like it's really misleading. But so when the band started to tour, it was like, that drug is not gonna bring us success. So when we hit the road, no more meth, it was done. But when we hit the road, we got like Jägermeister endorsements. We got Coke dealers around us. We got girls that just wanted to party. And so we fell into the other traps. But we're like, it's not methamphetamine, so a little bit of Coke, So we were doing the other stuff. And that progressed over years and years. Me and my wife ended up getting divorced. And we would fall back into meth sometimes, like on a weekend. And then the whole next week we'd be arguing, physical fights. It was just horrible, and but we kept going back and forth. And so the rock bottom, I'd say, when she left me, found a boyfriend when I was on tour with Metallica. She was with these guys in my house, and my daughter was there, and I found out about it, and I called her, and they knew I was coming home, so they left. All the guys and my wife left, and so she wanted me to visit with the kid, and so I visited with my daughter, but I was like, I'm not leaving her here. I took her on the road. And I got sober. After that tour, we came home, and I just focused on being a dad. I got full custody. Sober 4 months, 9/11 happens. I start stressing out over the world and fear and everything, and I start drinking again. And then I go full force back into the drugs for a couple years. I ended up moving back to Bakersfield, where it all started. Promised I wasn't going to do meth ever again. When I was in Bakersfield one night, I was hanging out with this guy. He had an oil business. He was rich, and we were talking about just drinking and how we used to do meth. He told me his employees do meth. We ended up getting too drunk and called one of them. And I was like, just one night, became a 2-year addiction. I became just like those guys and my ex. What I judged, I became. And took it all over the world, to Asia, Europe, everywhere. And I ended up just a meth head. I tried to go to outpatient rehab to get off it. At the end of that 2-year thing in 2004. But as a last resort, my friends invited me to go to church, and that was when the shift happened.
What were you thinking? What were you feeling at that moment? Did you think, I'm not welcome here, I don't belong, or were they welcoming you in? Tell me about that whole experience. What's going on?
It was crazy because I knew that, this is what I knew about Christians, that they didn't drink, cuss, or smoke. They're the ones that people kind of make fun of, and they think they're all holy and perfect, and that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. But the guy that took me to church built monster trucks and built sports cars, and he had this business that he would soup up these cars and take them to car shows, like in SEMA in Las Vegas, and he would win every year. So I became friends with these guys, and I was drawn to them because they had happy families, and there was a closeness, you know? Mm-hmm. And they asked me to go to church. They must have known I was on something, because I was a rock star and I looked like, I just looked like I was on something, to tell you the truth. But I would lie to everybody, but they invited me to go to church. I walk in there, and there's the pastor and all these people. The worship's playing. I hear the song Majesty, and it touches, like, I'm an emotional guy, and I was like, this, I didn't know what it meant, but I was like, this is really beautiful music. And I felt that peace, And when the pastor got up, he just looked like he dressed normal. He didn't look holier than thou or nothing. And he talked about Christ coming in to live inside of you. And that all the things that, if you have things in your life that you're doing that are hurting you and harming you, if you stick with Christ and start to grow, then they can't stay, and your whole life will change.
All right, so we're talking in this series about justice and mercy and humility. I'm really curious about mercy from your perspective, because it's at this moment you sense the mercy of God in your life. Tell me a little bit about that, and tell me a little bit about the mercy of the people around you. Did you feel like you were accepted by them and brought in by them? Did you sense that kind of mercy like you did from God?
When I went into church, it was like, I felt like everyone was accepting, yeah. I felt like there was love, and I felt like God's mercy it was like, I just love you, and I don't care what you have done, and whatever you have done to ruin your life, just come to me. And that was the scripture. Matthew 11:28, Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And a couple different people that didn't know each other were giving me that verse. And so that was God just telling me, this is God, he's reaching out to you, that's your scripture.
Yeah.
And I started to realize it was, and it all became real. And then, oh my gosh, the excitement for life. I don't understand how people don't feel like I did. People are like, oh my gosh, this guy's like, even the guy that took me to church, he's like, Brian, calm down. It's just, you don't got to get all weird. And it's, some people get weird and spiritual. Like, I'm like, you don't understand. This is like what I've been looking for my whole life.
Right. So you decide you're a Christian, you're a follower of Jesus. And then you made some pretty bold moves. One was, obviously, you got sober, but then you also quit Korn and left the band. And then you decide, I'm going to be a Christian musician. And the reception wasn't all that great from people. Korn was not all that happy with you.
Yeah.
The church people, they didn't go to your concerts or buy your music. I mean, did you sense like, where's this mercy I once had? Now it's kind of gone. How'd you feel about all that?
That's a great question, because the first, like when I started encountering God, like I told you, and I felt that mercy and that just come to me. All I want is you. Oh, that other stuff, the drugs and all that, the anger, all the rage, we'll work that out. Just come to me. And I just felt his embrace. And then the things in my life that had me feel stable and everything, I would be like, God, I want more faith. I want to have faith like the guys in the Bible. Then my money like grew wings, flew away. A lot of people make the mistake. This is a key moment in a Christian walk. And it happens at churches all the time. A lot of people, this happens and they make the mistake to leave the church and walk away from God. It's like we're given this, honestly, a test of how far are we willing to go, and like, will we suffer with the Lord? Will we walk away from him when things go wrong, And so, thank God I was given grace to just stay in it. And I know one thing that was the biggest thing that, the spiritual enemies we have, whatever that looks like, is unforgiveness. So I would always forgive and be like, Lord, I would love to choke these guys out, but I choose to forgive them, and I just bless them, and help me, that type of thing. So I never walked away from him, but it was a very high lack of mercy.
What I love about your movie that came out recently, Loud Crazy Love, about the journey of you and your daughter through all of this,
Yeah.
is you really chronicle your journey of, absolute rock bottom, leaving the band, and then kind of your own questioning of, well, why aren't people receiving this the way that I thought they would? And then you extend mercy to the band, and you come back to the band, and you're now sharing the love of God on a huge platform now with all the people that are fans, but in a very non-judgmental, loving way. Talk about that transformation a little bit and kind of where you are now with that.
As I walked through this journey with them, I made many mistakes, and so I wasn't showing people mercy all the time either. I remember when I left the band and I found out the bass player became Christian, I was like, how are you in the band? And you feel good about playing those songs, And I told him that. So that wasn't mercy. That was
right.
That was judgmental. And so I learned as I went back and I started playing around. And my solo career did start to grow, like little by little by little. I ended up getting these cooler shows, and I ended up connecting with Korn. And I saw them at some big rock festival, and they asked me to play a song with them. I played a song with them, and singer breaks down in tears and he was just, thank you for this last experience. If we never play again, thank you for giving me this memory. Because it was a positive memory instead of the negative when I left. And it was just, I saw God doing this, and a lot of people got emotional with that appearance because it spread over the internet. My dad even cried the next day because he knew these guys since we were little, and he was like, what a cool thing to see. And no one thought they would see it. And I just felt, honestly, we're talking about mercy, I felt the mercy of Jesus for my band and for all the big crowd of those people. And I was watching at that concert before I played with them, I was looking out at the crowd, and I felt a whisper, like almost in my own mind and thoughts and everything, that the Lord just kind of came through, and he was like, these are my people, and I want them. And I felt that in my emotions, and I'm listening to this band, Five Finger Death Punch, and I'm watching them and like almost tearing up, and I'm like, this has got to be the Lord, because that doesn't make sense. And so they asked me to come back, and I remember that, and I got advice and counsel from people, and I just walked back into that atmosphere and joined the band again. And it's raw, it's real, and it's raw, and there's some partying going on, but there's no groupies backstage. There's no hard drugs ever. Us guys, we don't party anymore. It's just chill now. It's about the music and the fans.
The great thing about your journey is your daughter has been front and center for all this. Tell us where she is now. You guys seem to have a great relationship, and just what's God done in her life?
I mean, I feel like what God gave me, which is the grace and the strength to really work on things and to share struggles. He's given her that grace, because in our new movie, Loud Crazy Love, she shared all of the struggles that she went through as a teen. I tried to raise her with Christ, in the church, and connect with the right people and all that. But when she turned 13, 14, she fell into her mom's been out of her life. So those issues came up, and me and her butting heads, and it was just, I was trying to be dad and mom for years, and she started harming herself and she cut her arms both sides in 2013. So I had to get really just deep counseling for her long term, and so I found a boarding school that had counseling. The hardest day of my life was when I dropped her off there against her will, because she threatened she would run away. So I just kind of went there, checked out the school, and said, I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm enrolling you today. And she broke to pieces, and I did too. I cried for like an hour, but it was the best thing for her. So she's been there 5 years. She's now graduated high school. She's in online college taking creative writing, and she works for the school. I couldn't be more proud of this kid, man. She's just talked about all of her dark times, and it's amazing. God is so good. He restores all things, all things, if you just give him your life and trust him.
For anybody out there watching this who's a parent of a child that they think might be experimenting with drugs or self-harm, what would you say to them, having been on both sides of this, as one who dealt with it and one who watched their daughter deal with it? What would you say to them as a way to encourage them and how to interact with their teen?
We have our children for a certain amount of years before they're legal adults, and so you do anything in your power to help them. And that's what I did with that when I took her to the boarding school. It was tough love. It was the best thing for her. And so I would just give that advice. Do anything and everything you can. Love them, love them, love them, love them. But if they're not responding to, you have to get real with your options, because I know we love our kids too much to let them just fall,
This has been fantastic. Thank you. Your books are Save Me From Myself, and what's the latest one?
With My Eyes Wide Open.
Eyes Wide Open, okay.
And that it's kind of like goes with the story of the movie.
The movie's fantastic, and it's incredibly raw, but very real. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yes, thank you. I love your church and what you do, and you're one of my favorite speakers. I don't know if you knew that, but
I did not.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, buddy. It's an honor. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but that was just inspiring to me, to hear this guy's story and to see how he's living this out with his daughter, with his band, with their fans, but in his life. So what does this mean for us? How do we love mercy? Well, I think it looks a variety of ways, but I want to talk about mercy as it applies in three specific areas. The first one is for those we don't know. I mean, let's be honest. You and I have opportunities every single day to extend mercy to people in the smallest of ways. Somebody cuts you off in traffic and you just let it slide. Somebody's driving slow and you go around them, and instead of staring at them, or instead of giving them the one-fingered salute, shall we say, you just let it go. Or maybe for you it's a time in your home when you know you're right and you could flex your authority, but you just back off and you just let it go. I mean, every time there's people around us, we have opportunities to extend mercy. And most of the times it's for people we don't even know, but in that moment you could love mercy by just letting it go. But there's a second way. And this is for the people in our home. This is for our friends and family. These are for the people that we know. We know these people, we work with these people, and they have hurt us, they've offended us, and they owe us. They owe us a childhood. They owe us forgiveness. They owe us money. They owe us Christmas last year. And you have a running list in your head of all the things that they owe you. Maybe the best thing you can do is to give them what they don't deserve, is to push the consequences, is to erase the debt and extend mercy, because that is what Christ has done for you. To be able to look at them and say, you don't owe me anything anymore. When you do that, you're the one who's freed. That's what it means to love that kind of mercy, to run into situations where you can not only offer assistance, but you can even offer forgiveness. But there's also a third one, and this is the one we often overlook, and this is extending mercy to ourselves. In fact, look at one of the more famous things that Jesus ever said. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, we tend to look at that verse and we sum it up real quickly, right? We say, love God, love people. That's what it's all about. That's what the church should do. Love God, love people. How do we do that? Justice, mercy, humility. Fantastic. But we miss something. He says, I want you to love your neighbor just like you love yourself. I want you to think about that for a minute. Now, this is not some kind of new age philosophy of, you know what, just love you, just take care of you, look out for number one. This is a basic understanding that Jesus has, that when you love yourself for who God made you to be, and you're at peace with yourself, and you've forgiven yourself, and you've accepted God's love for you, it is much easier to love your neighbor, and certainly to love your God. But if truth be told, If we loved our neighbors the way we loved ourselves, we would probably be very judgmental to them. We'd be very critical of them. We'd be very unforgiving of them. We wouldn't let things go. In a word, we would be unmerciful. And maybe that's the reason we are that way to so many people, because we haven't learned to forgive ourselves. If Jesus, the one who created us, could die for us and forgive us, why do we think we have to keep putting ourselves on the cross? Jesus has already done it for us. It's time to accept that gift and show mercy even though we don't deserve it. So here's where I want us to go with this week. In your day-to-day events over the next few days, I want you to ask this question. It's simple, but it's huge. To whom do you need to show mercy? It might be a boss. It might be a client. It might be a coworker. It might be a friend from years ago. They don't even know you have a problem with them, but you need to let it go. It might be someone that lives in your own home. It might be somebody you had an argument with this morning. It might be a child. It might be yourself. Who is it that you need to extend mercy? Because when you do that, you are living out the teachings and also the lifestyle of Jesus. I want you to ask yourself this simple prayer. Jesus, to whom do you want me to extend mercy? Let's pray that right now. God, thank you for everybody who's just engaged with this moment right now and is beginning to do some assessments as to the people in their life, the grudges that they hold, the mercy they're not extending. And we can think about justice and helping out people around the world and even across the street. But it's really hard for us to let some people off the hook when we know what they've done to us and what they owe us. And God, for some of us, it's really hard to let ourselves off the hook because we know how we've let ourselves down. And so would you give us that supernatural ability that can only come from you to be able to let these things go? It doesn't mean what they did was right. It doesn't mean that you support it. It just means that you're choosing the way of Jesus. So would you help us to do that in the way that He led for us how to show mercy? So would you put on our minds this week, who is it? Who is it that we need to extend mercy and let them off the hook? And we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.